Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, racist, sexist, Nazi, POTUS. The second is that's with a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us. Hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant, featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet, originally I was saying, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have, I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums. But the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now, so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV, and if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now, 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
And greetings, my friends, patriots, lovers of democracy, truth, and justice, believers in peace, freedom, and the American way. Thom Hartmann here with you. And boy, a lot of news going on. The Trump administration arguing in court that they don't have to give kids soap or toothbrushes. In the second hour, we're going to be talking reparations and Mitch McConnell with the Reverend Cornell William Brooks. In our third hour, we're going to be talking about the new sanctuary movement. And there's just a lot going on, but I wanted to start out this first hour with my old friend and writing partner, Lamar Waldron. He is a political commentator, JFK historian, and author. The books that Lamar and I worked together on are Legacy of Secrecy, The Long Shadow of the JFK Assassination, Bobby Kennedy, the National Security of the Mafia, and the Assassination of Martin Luther King. And his most recent book, as well as Ultimate Sacrifice, his most recent books, Watergate, The Hidden History, and The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. And today is, or at least Monday, was the arrest of the Watergate burglars, was the anniversary. Today is the date that the 18-minute gap was created or, was recorded or however in one of Nixon's White House tapes. And Sunday is the date of Nixon's incriminating smoking gun tape, the day that it was recorded, so which led directly to his resignation. So we're right in the middle of all this stuff. This is our 4th annual show with Lamar looking at the latest parallels between Trump and Nixon. Lamar's latest book, The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. But today we'll be talking about his book, Watergate, The Hidden History. And Lamar, welcome to the program, and or welcome back to the program.
Great to be with you for this 4th annual Nixon-Trump Watergate show.
Really. And you basically predicted Trump's presidency 6 months before the case, based in part on the research you had done on Nixon. So, what are some of the most important parallels between Nixon and Watergate on the one hand, and Donald Trump? Well, let's start out with just Nixon and Watergate. What are the most important things that people are unaware of broadly?
Yeah, because I think, definitely you probably got some listeners that didn't hear our previous 3 shows, right, starting in 2016. So, so just to hit the very quick high points on just Watergate, because, people talk about it on TV as if, all that got figured out. Of course it didn't. There are there were 70 prosecutions of people, not 10, not 20, not 30, 70 guilty pleas or indictments, okay? And then the biggest thing is the Watergate arrest occurred in June of 1972, and yet it took more than 2 years until August of 1974 to get Nixon out of office. So
and 72 was the election year, just to remind people.
Well, and of course the big thing is just 4.5 months after the Watergate arrest, which was big news all over the country. It was no secret. Richard Nixon was reelected in one of the greatest landslides in history. So as we'll talk toward the end of the show, where we're looking ahead to 2020, people that think that Trump is for sure going to get defeated in 2020, history shows that may or may not be the case. The other big things people don't realize, so there were 2 special prosecutors, not just one independent counsel. There wasn't one Watergate burglary. There were 4 attempts there, plus an earlier successful attempt at the Chilean embassy in Washington, D.C., and most discussions of Watergate don't even talk about what they were after and why. Basically, they were after information that could have exposed Nixon's earlier crimes. So basically, you had a president committing new crimes in the hopes of hiding old crimes that he didn't want to come out that involved organized crime. And here's a big thing that floors me today. Donald Trump is still withholding many, many important Nixon Watergate files today about the main Watergate burglars, people like Bernard Barker and Frank Sturgis, the whole mastermind overseer of the Watergate plumbers team, as they were called, E. Howard Hunt, who was a very faithful guy to Nixon. So a lot of their top secret files have never been released today.
So is it fair to say that Trump is holding them back, or is this more of the institutional inertia of D.C.?
It's specifically Trump, because those records involving Hunt and Barker and Sturgis are all covered under the JFK Records Act that Congress passed unanimously back in 1992. And so on 3 different occasions, Donald Trump all those files were supposed to be released a year and a half ago, and on 3 different occasions, Donald Trump has kicked that can down the road. Had the National Archives release some stuff that the news media, then throws them a little bit of meat, and they don't really notice the big stuff. But right now, those files aren't scheduled to be released. I believe it's until 2021.
So why would Trump be protecting the legacy of Nixon?
Well, I think one big reason is because Trump and Nixon had personal ties. I mean, they personally met through the offices or the good graces, rather, of Roy Cohn, one of the most notorious and despicable mafia lawyers in history, who got his start with Joe McCarthy, and actually inadvertently helped to bring McCarthy down. They didn't intend that to happen. And then, of course, Roger Stone. So Roger Stone is just, admitted and written in one of his books in great detail how he was, because Stone loves Richard Nixon so much. He has the famous Richard Nixon tattoo on his back. And he was working on I think the Reagan campaign, early 80s, and they wanted to get Roy Cohn involved, and then that actually then led to Stone. It was, I believe, the person who got Cohn, because Roy Cohn was basically Donald Trump's mentor. This despicable lawyer who didn't try cases in courts, really. Roy Cohn operated on blackmail, threats, and intimidation. And that's who Trump openly admitted back in the 80s was his mentor. And so basically, Cohn and especially Stone got Trump and Nixon together, and it was Richard Nixon who actually was the first person to actually predict that Donald Trump would run for and win the presidency. Nixon, according to Stone, tried to say that was Pat, Nixon's wife's opinion, but Stone made it really clear. Now, that was Nixon's opinion. So Nixon recognized that this guy could really, be his man,
fulfill the Nixon legacy.
Was not able to start to finish.
Nixon recognized that Donald Trump could fulfill the Nixon legacy, some years down the road?
It's difficult to believe. Like I say, it's really, really well documented. And when you look at all of the stuff that Trump did to get elected and that Nixon did to get elected, I mean, they're pretty much hand in glove stuff.
Well, now Roger Stone obviously worked with both men. Roy Cohn worked with both men.
Exactly.
Paul Manafort was, Lee Atwater was a partner in the company with Paul Manafort in putting together the Willie Horton ads for George Herbert Walker Bush Sr. and for Reagan.
Manafort goes all the way back to the 70s. I mean,
so that was my question. Does Manafort go back to Nixon too?
No, Manafort, I believe he first surfaces in the mid-1970s.
Okay, so the Jerry Ford administration.
But what you had people like Manafort and Lee Atwater who saw what had been effective for Nixon, and then with Atwater and Manafort both, they first apply it to Reagan and then to Bush and then Manafort to Trump. So I'd love to just go through a few of those basic tactics.
Yeah.
They're pretty much the same.
Let's do it in just a moment. We're talking with Lamar Waldron. Specifically, we're talking about his book, Watergate, The Hidden History, and the parallels between Richard Nixon and Donald Trump. And not just the parallels, the actual associations, the links between these two men, how their presidencies are similar, and what Watergate might inform us about a Trump impeachment.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
It's our fourth annual look with Lamar Waldron, author of The Hidden History, Watergate, The Hidden History, of the relationship between Trump and Nixon. So, welcome back. Lamar, you wanted to go through a few of these bullet points here.
Yeah, I mean, the basic techniques that Nixon used were so successful for him, and that Trump used them, which was how I was able to predict Trump's victory, sadly, 4.5 months before he was elected. I hate to use that term where Trump's concerned, but first off, the number one thing that Nixon perfected, starting even before he ran for president, back when he was vice president, was fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smears, which a Republican senator, I believe, in the early 50s, coined that as fibs. And so if you think about it, almost everything we're going to talk about today, or everything that Trump ever does, fits into either fear, ignorance by spreading lies, bigotry, or smears. And they worked great for Nixon, and they worked great for Trump. One of the other things they use often is what I call the opposite of the truth trick, which is part of the ignorance part, and that's where if you listen to what Trump is saying, like it is Orlando rollout, almost everything he's condemning the Democrats for are things that he himself is guilty of, and yet because he gets out in front and hits them hard and in ways that most Democrats are too polite to fight back, that actually sticks, not just with Trump's base, but with a lot of undecided people in the middle. The third thing are what we would call the McCarthy-Cohn tactics, which are basically bigotry and smears. I mean, it's like smear, 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 attack, 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 never apologize. And for Trump, that has worked. They both had Nixon and Trump enemies list. I mean, Nixon actually had physical enemies list. Trump pretty much doesn't hide. He's very public about his. Nixon and Trump were also great at playing the victim. I mean, Nixon, before he was elected president, he was a rich man who had been vice president for 8 years and was in political wilderness for a while. And of course, Trump, claims to have had a lot of money, certainly has a lot of fame, and yet they're constantly able to play the victim to their base. And like I say, unfortunately, some people in the middle, divide and conquer is one of their other big techniques that they use, and that's whether it's on abortion or immigration or whatever. There's no gray. It's like you're here or you're there, and then you guys fight. When really a lot of that stuff is just a smokescreen to hide other, either funneling money to the wealthy or other crimes people like Trump and people like our governor here in Georgia have committed. Next to last thing is politicizing the FBI. I mean, back when the Kavanaugh hearing was going on, you had that period of time when people were going to the FBI, walking in FBI offices, calling the FBI, saying, "I've got information on Kavanaugh," and the FBI apparently had been instructed to say, why are you calling us? Why you're saying this guy committed a crime? Why we're the FBI? Why should we care? Which I hadn't seen that kind of thing, frankly, since the aftermath of the FBI and the JFK assassination, and so politicizing the FBI, and then last but not least, threatening the news media. I mean, that was a big part of Nixon's enemies list. I mean, Trump saying the New York Times is committing treason. I mean, it's the things you almost wouldn't expect to see in America, and yet it works.
Remarkable stuff. We'll be back with Lamar Waldron. Watergate, The Hidden History is the book we're talking about, and the associations between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon, and how this can inform us as we possibly head toward a Trump impeachment. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. We're talking with Lamar Waldron, his most recent book, Watergate, The Hidden History, and not actually his most recent book is The Hidden History of the JFK assassination, but Lamar and I wrote 2 books on this topic together, Legacy of Secrecy and Ultimate Sacrifice. And we're talking about how Trump is basically using the Nixon playbook. Nixon predicted that Trump one day would be president. These guys knew each other. They had associations through people like Roger Stone and Roy Cohn and so on. And Lamar was just telling us about how Nixon perfected this technique of fibs, F-I-B-S, fear, ignorance, bigotry, and smears. And Trump has been using that since 2016 and will be using that as we go into the next election. The McCarthy-Cohn tactics, the enemies list, play the victim, the divide and conquer, politicize the FBI, threaten the news media, all this stuff. Lamar, what you're describing here sounds to me like fascism.
Well, you're exactly right, Tom. It is fascism. I hate to say it, but back when, just before Nixon resigned, after the Supreme Court had ordered the release of what's called the smoking gun tape, that just made it clear to everyone that Nixon had been at the heart of Watergate, had been obstructing justice. I mean, you just couldn't deny it because he was saying it. The Supreme Court ruled, executive privilege, we're overruling that. This is too important. And yet still, the day Nixon left office, between 29 and 30% of Americans still openly admitted they supported him. And I hate to say it, and some of this research goes back to the late 40s, after World War II, when scientists wanted to see that they didn't want that to happen again, right? And so the sad fact is, between 29 and 30% of Americans, almost a third of Americans, are basically fascists. I mean, if you read the old dictionary definition of fascism, most white conservative Christians would vote for that tomorrow. Because
the merger of state and corporate interests along with belligerent nationalism, is that what you're talking about?
And a conservative alliance, basically.
Right.
That's it, and they would go for that. So, I mean, look at all the ways that Trump and Nixon were both fascists, ordering and inciting violence. I mean, Nixon literally, Trump literally on TV ordered, get that guy. Nixon, in his hard hats and having the plumbers attack people. Nixon, now Nixon, as far as we know, went farther than Trump. Nixon actually actively planned to kill Jack Anderson, to have the plumbers kill Jack Anderson.
A reporter. An investigative reporter of the day,
the most famous reporter in America before Woodward and Bernstein.
Right.
This famous reporter. And Ellsberg, Daniel Ellsberg, the guy who leaked the Pentagon Papers and, famous activist, he's convinced Nixon's plumbers were going to kill him. And my research shows that since the 2 plumbers who were actually targeting him were both working for Godfather Santo Trafficante of the Mafia, both those men had killed people before. They had both been part of the CIA Mafia plots to kill Castro. Yeah, Ellsberg's probably right. Now, Trump has not gone that far yet. But look at the other comparisons. Nixon and Trump, they both loved brutal foreign dictators. I mean, Nixon got tons of money from brutal foreign dictators. Trump gets money from foreign dictators. In fact, Nixon's love for Central American brutal dictators sowed the seeds of today's immigration crisis.
Right.
And also, get this, speaking of the immigration crisis, both Nixon and Trump both, made plans for what I would call concentration camps.
Yeah, that term concentration camps, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez used it, and all the Republicans are like, oh, you can't talk like that. It seems to me like Democrats calling Trump's concentration camps is this is the strategy that Republicans have always used, which is go right to the most brutal characterization you possibly can of what the Democrats are doing and use that word regardless of outrage. Seems like a wise thing to use it, but it's also a factual thing, is it not? I remember visiting Dachau in Germany. There were no death camps in Germany. Hitler put those all outside Germany, in Holland, in Poland, Auschwitz, Belsen, all those. The ones inside Germany, there were hundreds of them, were actually concentration camps. They were labor camps.
Exactly right. And I'm glad you mentioned Dachau, because they had something at Dachau called standing cells, where you would put up to 4 people in a small cell, and there was no room for anyone to even sit down. I mean, that was literally a form of torture the Nazis used at Dachau. And Trump's own Department of Homeland Security, the Inspector General report recently, said that at one of the what they call detention camps, I call a concentration camp, for the new people crossing the border, there were 76 people in a cell designed for 12, 155 people in a cell designed for 35, 41 people in a cell designed for 8. 900 people total in a facility in El Paso with 135-person capacity. I mean, that is literally really a great deal like Dachau. But when we look at the history of concentration camps in America, I mean, America's got a long, sad history of that. I mean, going back to, most people don't realize in 1934, Georgia Governor Eugene Talmadge, the father of Senator Herman Talmadge, the guy that Biden mentioned yesterday, in 1934, Georgia Governor Eugene Talmadge declared martial law, put 37 labor activists in a concentration camp. In 1950, Nixon, along with McCarthy, helped to get the 1950 Internal Security Act passed, where communists had to register, and if you were a Communist Front organization member, you had to register, and of course they were calling the ACLU a Communist Front, right? People don't realize there were 6 concentration camps established in 1950, but most people don't know about them because they were never used, but they were established. And then we flash ahead from 1950 to 1969-70, and Nixon's Deputy Attorney General, his Rod Rosenstein, Richard Kleindienst, told the Atlantic that demonstrators against Nixon should be, quote, should be rounded up and put in detention camps. So, again, you can't make this stuff up. Yeah,
it's really true. We'll continue right after this break at the bottom of the hour. We're talking with Lamar Waldron, his book, Watergate, The Hidden History. We're talking about the parallels between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And how understanding those parallels can A, help us fight Trump, and B, inform any potential impeachment investigations and impeachment of Donald Trump. Boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, sexist, Nazi, POTUS. The second is that's with a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift, and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us, hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant, featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet, originally I was saying, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have, I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums. But the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV. And if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. Tomorrow night, I'll be on the Bill Maher Show on Saturday in Los Angeles. Stephanie Miller and I, 3 p.m. in L.A., Seattle, 7:30 p.m. Sunday, Tuesday, Berkeley at the First Church, 7 p.m. Friday, Chicago, 7 p.m. at the Frugal Muse Bookstore in Darien. Saturday in Minneapolis at Next Chapter Booksellers in St. Paul, formerly Common Good Books, just heads up. We're talking to Lamar Waldron for the full hour. He is the JFK historian, author of Legacy of Secrecy, along with Watergate, The Hidden History, and The Hidden History of the JFK Assassination. We're specifically talking, this is our 4th annual conversation with Lamar, about the relationship parallels and interrelationships between Donald Trump and Richard Nixon, and how that can, back in our first conversation, in fact, it was months before the election, Lamar said, basically, based on all this stuff, I predict that Donald Trump is going to win the White House using the same techniques that Richard Nixon did. And sure enough, Lamar was right. So now we're talking about how can we use this information to have an informed discussion about Trump in a way that might lead to his impeachment or certainly his defeat. So, Lamar, we've talked, and I don't know how much you want to amplify on this, that Trump and Nixon both used racism to turn out the vote. They both used intolerance and hatred, even when it wasn't racially directed, Nixon against the hippies and whatnot, Trump against liberals and Democrats and that kind of stuff. They both are masterful manipulators of the corporate media. And also, Nixon went beyond bending the law, beyond simply being a bad politician, to actually breaking the law and being a criminal. I'm assuming that you're seeing a parallel there between Nixon and Trump as well.
Oh, so many. But before we dive into that, let me just point out a couple of other things that you just said. One, in terms of the racism and intolerance, which is, of course, another part of fascism, right? The sad fact is racists have been providing the margin of victory for many Republicans since Nixon and his so-called Southern strategy, which was kind of a soft form of racism that didn't use the N-word, that moderates could feel okay about voting for Nixon. So I'm not saying that all conservatives or Republicans are racist, but I'm saying it's simply a statistical fact that racists are the margin of victory for a lot of Republicans since Nixon. He's the guy that perfected that. And of course, here's another sad fact: both Nixon and Trump are really more elitist than racist. I mean, Trump in the 50s, Nixon in the 50s was regarded as definitely a moderate on race, and it was only in his 1960 campaign. In fact, most blacks in America were still voting Republican, from back with the
all the way back to Lincoln,
right?
Yeah.
And so it was only the 1960 election when Martin Luther King was arrested and put in this horrible jail in South Georgia and may well have been killed there, and there were all these appeals to do something, and Nixon, he wouldn't speak out.
Nixon was vice president at the time and running against John Kennedy for president.
Exactly. Vice President Nixon, who had the power to even do something. He could have sent federal marshals to get him out of this something that was half a step from a chain gang. Yeah. He didn't. JFK did, and that was a big switch. So, but the sad fact is, Nixon then turned to racism, for votes. Trump's the same way. People forget. I've heard just on TV the other day, and it reminded me, Trump used to be really big with all the African-American rappers in America. They would mention him in their songs. They would hang out with him. Trump even dated a black woman after one of his many divorces. So for them, it's just a cold, calculated strategy for votes and money. And they play on that conservative and basically, moderate anxiety over losing their white privilege, and they just do it so well. You mentioned the manipulation of the media. That a lot of that started with Nixon and a guy named Roger Ailes that was Nixon's media advisor, and of course Ailes went on to found Fox News, and we see how that goes. The other sad fact is the mainstream media pretty much supports Republicans. They help to make Trump the nominee. I never heard anyone in the mainstream media say Trump was an alleged billionaire or a self-proclaimed billionaire. No, CNN, he was a billionaire. And so, and the mainstream media, they ignored Trump's incitement, by the tweet of of what turned out to be that horrible Pittsburgh massacre. Even the white nationalist, his Orlando kickoff just the other day, the mainstream media pretty much ignored that. So that's what we're all dealing with. But still, even with all that, as you said, it's not just hardball politics. It goes into actual breaking of the law, and we'll take them one thing at a time.
Okay.
Starting with the illicit money. I mean, both men profited hugely from the presidency. Nixon, by basically when he was shaking down corporate America and wealthy people when they wanted favors or legislation, and he would get money for his campaign, he would also oftentimes literally pocket some of that money. And profiting from foreign governments, they both do that. Again, Nixon would just get direct contributions from, like, the brutal dictator, the Shah of Iran, or Marcos, the dictator of the Philippines, or the Saudi dictators. I mean, they would just literally give, the president cash. And then some of that cash would be hidden through shady real estate deals, and that's Donald Trump's middle name. But Richard Nixon was a big part of that. That's how he increased his net worth so hugely during the time he was president. He used his best friend, Bibi Rebozo, to handle a lot of those real estate transactions because Rebozo had his own little private bank that they could launder that money to. And in fact, they both, Trump is now under investigation from Deutsche Bank and stuff for the laundering of money. A lot of people think that's at the core of all the Russian stuff. Nixon literally laundered his money with the help of Bibi Rebozo. But one thing I have to add, at one point they actually bought a coin laundry down north of Miami to use for their money laundering operations because, of course, a coin-operated coin laundry, you can't prove what money comes in to that,
Right. If you show up with $1,000 in quarters, where'd that come? Right.
Well, or you just say, oh yeah, hey, a lot of clothes got washed this month. We suddenly got $100,000,
and it's all in cash.
Yeah, and so it's and then hiding and not paying their taxes. People oftentimes forget that when Nixon gave his "I'm not a crook" speech, that was not at all about Watergate. That was after it turned out he was hiding his taxes, and then he had practically paid no taxes. And so, they're just, when you add like the not paying the taxes to getting all this illegal, money, because when I say shady, Trump's shady real estate deals go back to the mid-'80s. He was one of two developers in New York City that would sell condos in buildings to blind corporations, where you didn't know who the real buyer was. Most developers wouldn't do that because, that was oftentimes going to be mafia money or drug money. Trump was one of only two developers that would do that. And so that brings us literally up to today, and Deutsche Bank and all that money laundering and stuff, and all the stuff that's not in the Mueller report.
Yeah, which is pretty astonishing. How did Nixon and Trump get involved in all these crimes? I mean, were they lifelong career criminals?
Pretty much, yes, exactly. In other words, let's look at Nixon. When Nixon was a teenager, they used to have. You're old enough. A lot of your listeners won't, but you remember the old carnivals that would come to town and that sort of stuff, and they would have these sideshows, and they would have these games where you'd win stuff and everything.
Oh, I worked in one when I was 16. I came to Newego, and they gave me a part-time job running the concession where you shot a BB gun and so yeah, I know them. I remember those carnivals.
I knew that about you. We've known each other for so many. I didn't know that, but so get this: when Richard Nixon was 16 and 17, Prescott, Arizona, they would have their big rodeo carnival days, and there was and the people who owned the different people would own the concessions. And the people that did what was a shady game called the Wheel of Fortune, it was a mob-run game, and they hired young, Richard Nixon to do that game, and they basically taught him how to fleece people with a smile, so they'll come back and let you fleece them again.
Oh, is that bizarre?
And so Nixon actually used that when he was in the military. He never actually saw combat or anything, but Nixon actually got some of the money he used to run for Congress in World War II from playing poker with his buddies, and he won. In today's money, it would. I think in today's money, we could be talking about between $100,000-$200,000 in poker. And
running rigged games, fixed games.
Well, probably they were rigged, but the important thing is the people still loved him, even though he was shafting them, and then you go in the people who also helped to fund his first runs for office were the Los Angeles Mafia, a guy by the name of Mickey Cohen. They helped to finance, along with Howard Hughes and the big Eastern banks, his runs for Congress, then when he ran for the Senate, and then, of course, they're still supporting him when he's vice president for 8 years. And then when Nixon is finally president, elected, in a very close race in 68, takes office 69, the plumbers, two of the plumbers, as I mentioned before, they were active, full-time mafia members for Santo Trafficante, and Nixon, basically most of the plumbers had worked on Nixon's plots to kill Castro right before the 60 election. That's why he used these guys to burglarize the Watergate and the Chilean embassy, because Castro had prepared a report that had all that stuff in it. So Nixon had a long mafia history, and when we come back, we can talk about Trump's long mafia history.
Wow, amazing stuff. We're talking with Lamar Waldron specifically about his book, Watergate, The Hidden History, and how it relates, the relationship between Donald Trump, Richard Nixon, impeachment, criminality. What can we learn from this? How can knowing this help us now? Stick around.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We're talking with author Lamar Waldron. Stick around. So welcome back. Lamar, we've talked about how Nixon was a criminal literally from his teenage years. By the way, when I worked at that carnival, it just seemed like good, clean fun. But, what do you know? Anyhow, what about Trump's criminality? What do we know? What are we speculating about?
Well, we know that he had mafia contacts starting at least in the 80s. They probably started in the late 70s, but of course he's got New York's top mob lawyer as his mentor. And in the construction trades, the mafia was kind of a fact of life, but you didn't have to embrace the mafia and the mafia's top lawyer the way that Trump did and make the mafia's top lawyer in New York City your mentor. And like I say, a lot of the people buying the Trump condos and buildings and stuff like that were these blind deals where you had no idea who the real buyer was. That's drug money, that's mafia money. And so that and then of course Trump gets into the gambling business in the casinos in Atlantic City. You've got a lot of mafia stuff going on there, and so and then you get into organized crime in terms of Russia. By the time we get into the turn of the century, and most no real American banks will loan Trump any money, and so then, as I think it was Don Jr. that said, "Oh yeah, we're getting all our money from Russia now." But one of the reasons that Putin hated Hillary Clinton so badly was that she had basically agreed when one of her ambassadors said that Putin and Russia was basically an organized crime government essentially, and so Trump has needed organized crime from the get-go to keep up that appearance of him doing that. And that's why it was easy, for both of these men to commit treason to win their elections. Nixon with the very corrupt government of South Vietnam, where Nixon cut the back deal to keep the Vietnam War going so he could win the 68 election, because he knew if the Vietnam War ended right before the 68 election, the Democratic candidate, Hubert Humphrey,
then the vice president under Lyndon Johnson, who had just cut a peace deal with South Vietnam, yeah.
he would probably win. I mean, Nixon barely eked out, a 500,000 vote electoral, not a popular vote victory anyway. So, and then of course Trump commits treason with Putin. I mean, for all that Trump did, flipping I believe it was about 45,000 votes, and I was getting 45,000, Democrats to stay home and ginning up 45,000 Republicans in those three critical states to go out and vote. That's what made Trump president, and they used that micro-targeting that they got from the Trump campaign. And why Mueller doesn't want to go into that, who knows? But in any event, so we didn't have treason, and then Trump has said he's going to take Putin's help again, and he's already torpedoing. Trump is his executive director is torpedoing the Election Assistance Commission. His Republican senators are blocking reforms needed for safe elections, and so it's just all set up to happen again.
It's truly astonishing, and you're absolutely right. And I think a lot of people are scratching their heads why Mitch McConnell and why the Republicans in the Senate would be supportive of Trump's efforts to prevent Congress.
I will tell you exactly why when we come back.
Okay, we'll do that. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour here. We've got about another 6 or 7 minutes here with Lamar Waldron talking about Donald Trump, Richard Nixon, the parallels. Stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back. 10 minutes before the hour, we're talking with Lamar Waldron, his book, Watergate, The Hidden History. This is our fourth annual show comparing Trump and Nixon. The first one back 4 years ago. In the first one, months before the election, Lamar Waldron pointed out that the parallels between Trump and Nixon were so great that if Trump continued to follow Nixon's game plan, just like Nixon did, he would get elected president. Lamar was right. And so, Lamar, we've been talking about the criminality. You talked about the criminality of Richard Nixon. Then we were talking about the crimes, the criminality, the mob associations and whatnot of Donald Trump. Why are the Republicans, particularly Mitch McConnell, being so aggressive in blocking the legislation that the Democrats passed in the House that would have offered money to the states and technical guidance and assistance to tighten up their electoral structures so that they can't get hacked by China, by Russia, by any country that might want to intervene in our election?
Two big reasons. One is that not only did Putin deliver the election for Trump, but it could have, and this is more, this is hazier, but it could have also given the Republicans one, possibly two more
Senate seats.
I mean, if Mitch McConnell had even one less seat, let alone two, he pretty much, because you still might have had Susan Collins in there, he wouldn't have been able to have shoveled through like all these horrible judges, like this most recent one that they approved yesterday, and so that's one part of it. And of course he got Donald Trump instead of Hillary Clinton as president. And then number two is I think McConnell and the Senate Republicans, they know that if they want to hang on to the Senate, Russia's help, hey, bring it on. They need that. And they're willing, once you've drunk that Kool-Aid, you're going to drink it again. And so and that's why they're willing to overlook so much of Trump's obstruction of justice, his ridiculous evolution of executive
Did
privilege.
Nixon have Republicans covering for him the same way Trump does?
Totally did. He unfortunately, Senator Howard Baker, who later
from Tennessee.
Howard Baker was the Republican that was the number two man,
right,
the head Republican on the Senate Watergate Committee, which was the big committee, and he is the guy who said, what did the president know and when did he know it, which was great. But before that, before he had seen so much evidence, he leaked through his top aide, Fred Thompson, who later became an actor, they leaked so much information, and other Republicans leaked so much information to Nixon. That's one of the reasons it took over 2 years from the Watergate arrest to get them out. And so, Nixon had his own Mitch McConnells and Lindsey Graham, only they weren't in the majority. But you had so many conservative Democrats, these older Southern conservative Democrats in Congress that, they gummed up the works for an awful long time.
Yeah. Lamar, we have about 3.5 minutes. What should the Democrats be doing? Should they be moving toward impeachment? How should they be characterizing Mueller? How should they deal with him if he doesn't testify? And if an impeachment hearing begins, how do you see all this playing out?
Well, what I think is going to be, I'm one of those people, because if you look at the Clinton impeachment, that was relatively short. That went from October to February, and it failed, right?
Right.
At least in terms of the Nixon efforts, the investigation, the impeachment, it took ages to get that stuff going.
2.5 years, really.
But it worked. I mean, it forced him to resign. So I'm one of the people, I don't think there's a problem with running the impeachment during the election year. I'm one of those people that think, do that, because you have a lot of your senators and a lot of, iffy purple district members of Congress who can be put in a very difficult light. And so I think if the Democrats continue to get evidence, if they can put Mueller on the spot, and here's what I would do with Mueller. I would start using, message discipline, get this out there. Did Mueller investigate Trump's money in Russia? If he didn't, why didn't he do it? And if he did do it, well, what's the status of that? Did he? Is it some?
Well, there's no reference to it in the Mueller report.
Exactly, but we do know I think it was. I saw different numbers. About a dozen referred investigations that were still going on when the report was written. Some of those could be Deutsche Bank, or Mueller may have just backed off. So I think if the Democrats
plus you have Letitia James and the AG of New York State looking at this stuff.
Well, the important thing for Mueller is, I think if the Democrats start raising those very specific points, and they literally put Mueller on the spot, you're going to force Mueller to have to come in and testify in public, basically to make his case for why he did or didn't do that. And then I think that starts a ball rolling that gets the attention of a lot of these middle-of-the-road moderates, and you're going to start to see the polling go up then. But I really do think a lot hinges on getting Mueller to testify, get him to testify in public, and make him – I mean, if every Democratic member asks those, three questions, those points about his investigation or the lack of it into Trump's financial ties to Russia, because if you think about it, that's the basic thing. That's what everybody has always thought. That would be where the connection is. Trump's still been acting guilty. He acted guilty for years. He's still acting guilty. Something is there, and either Mueller didn't want to find it, or he found so much he had to refer it out to one or more.
Right.
We need to know that. And if the Democrats will press him on that, and almost to the exclusion of everything else, I think that will start to get them the support they need.
I think you're right. And Nixon refused to release his taxes because he was trying to cover up his own crimes. I think the same is true for Trump. We need to make that point.
Exactly. And that's going to start. That's going to start to whittle away at the stuff. And the more the Democrats can harp on the Russia stuff, there's a 15 to 20 point gap between Trump's popularity among his base and Putin's popularity. And a lot of those people are older, people like you or I who remember the Cold War when Russia was the villain in every comic book, movie, and TV show. And the more you can hit that Russia connection, you're going to start to lower the enthusiasm. Because I tell you, when you look at enthusiastic voters, Trump is only trailing by 2%.
Wow. And and the Fox News average age is in the 70s. Lamar Waldron. Thank you, Lamar.
Thank you, Tom.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
You know, every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, you know, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, you know, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com and you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you. Boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, you know, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, you know, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Nazi POTUS. The second is that's with a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us. Hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you know, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant, featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet, you know, originally I was saying, you know, yeah, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have, you know, I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, you know, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums. But the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now, so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV. And if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now, 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Mueller report.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Our quote for the day from Malcolm X. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. But if you pull it out, and if you pull it out all the way, that's not progress. Progress is healing the wound that the blow made. And they haven't even pulled the knife out, much less healed the wound. They won't even admit the knife is in there. On the line with us is the Professor Reverend Cornell William Brooks, Professor of the Practice of Public Leadership and Social Justice at Harvard's Kennedy School, former President and CEO of the NAACP, and civil rights attorney and a 4th-generation ordained minister in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Reverend Brooks, or Professor Brooks, welcome to the program.
It's good to be with you. How are you?
I am great. Thanks so much for joining us today. There's been, this legislation, proposed legislation in the House Resolution 40, as I recall, to put together a commission to examine what reparations would look like, how they should happen, if they should happen, all this kind of stuff. And the Republicans are fighting this. You got Mitch McConnell saying, oh, there's no need for this. That was a long time ago, et cetera, et cetera. I've heard you speak on this very eloquently, and I was hoping you could bring that, your perspective to this program. What say you to those largely white Republicans who are saying this?
Well, I would simply say that this is a conversation that is 150 plus years overdue. That in the midst of, or I should say, just after the country has observed Juneteenth, in the midst of one of the most racially divided and balkanized moments in American history, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, with her colleagues, convenes a hearing on reparations, and specifically a hearing on whether or not to create a commission to start a national conversation about reparations. This is long overdue. When we think about the fact that not slavery from a century and a half ago, but the vestiges of slavery that continue into the present moment, this conversation is both morally urgent, It is timely as a matter of policy and as a matter of politics. And so what I would simply say to Republican members of the Senate and of the House, this is a conversation that can't be avoided. When we spend more time talking about Confederate statues that were erected long after the Civil War to romanticize the past that never existed and ignore the reality of a history that we yet live with, that says to us that this reparations conversation must happen, and it needs to happen now. And this represents such a wonderful opportunity, a rich opportunity for America to really come to grips with its past in the present. It would be different if slavery was not perpetuated into this present moment. It would be different if the voter suppression that Mitch McConnell supports, turns a blind eye to, and actually endorses. It would be different if that voter suppression wasn't literally a post-Reconstruction creation. In other words, slavery gave birth to the original forms of voter suppression, voter dilution, voter intimidation. That continues in this present 2019 moment. So the conversation is long overdue, and I would simply ask Leader McConnell, what exactly are you afraid of? The facts, the history,
right.
The moral and economic case for reparations, or even the occasion for having this conversation? In other words, think about this. America frequently exalts itself as a city on a hill. We talk to other countries about human rights. We went into the Balkans and tried to bring an end to ethnic genocide. We have talked about the Hutus and the Tutsis. We've talked about all manner of ethnic divisions and racial divisions around the world and tried to bring about peace and justice. Here we are in 2019 at home trying to duck a conversation we should have had a long time ago.
Yeah. If I'm remembering the numbers correctly, the median income for whites in the United States is around $170K. Now, that includes a lot of white billionaires, but still, it's a lot of money. And the median income for African Americans in the United States is around $17K. It seems like a 10-to-1 ratio, roughly. And my recollection on household wealth, but this is a few years old, this number, was that the average white household had around $80,000, $85,000 in wealth, mostly in the form of their home. The average black household nationwide had around $5,000 worth of wealth, and in many of the southern states it was actually a negative number. If those numbers don't comport with more recent numbers that you know of, please correct me, but given this roughly 10-to-1 wealth and income disparity, how do we address that head on?
Well, I think it's important when we talk about the income disparities and the wealth disparities to talk about the genesis of this and the origins of this, lest our readers and listeners walk away with the impression that somehow African Americans are less thrifty, less committed to saving and investing and being wise stewards,
or less capable
with
of
their
working.
Resources.
Which is the,
That's
I mean,
right.
this is, in fact, some years ago, I believe it was Lee Atwater, it might have been, in fact, I think it was when Atwater and Manafort were working together, he made the comment, or it might have been a different Republican consultant, we'll have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure it was Atwater, made the comment that the Republicans had to turn the Democratic Party into the, quote, black party. And it seems like McConnell refusing to even discuss this is the subtext to that is, well, we're the Republicans, we're the white party, and we're not the party of that special interest group, that minority group over there.
That's right.
And I think all this kind of ties together.
It absolutely ties together because what's suggested here is that somehow reparations is essentially a grandiose welfare program.
Right.
So if we go back to the history, go to the facts, go to the statistics, here's what we know. So the wealth gap between African Americans and white Americans and income gap between white Americans and African Americans is related to the fact that you had millions, 4 million African Americans coming out of slavery with nothing. And if that weren't bad enough, that their bodies and brilliance were literally commodified for the better part of 300 years, the land that African Americans were able to acquire, the income that they were able to generate, was systematically, with the aiding and abetting of the federal government, taken away from them. So when it comes to, let's literally say black bodies, so the convict leasing system, where Southern legislatures literally looked at what offenses can we turn into crimes, what behaviors can we turn into crimes, convict black people, and then, having convicted them, send them to prison, and then literally lease their bodies out to be worked to death, right? So this was a system of basically peonage. This was a system for literally working black men, predominantly, to death by turning them into basically slaves through the criminal justice system. That continued from after slavery up through World War I. Okay.
Yeah, well, it also continues to this day. I mean, the one exception to slavery in the 13th Amendment is if you've been convicted of a crime. And you know, we have for-profit prisons all over the country now, disproportionately with minority populations that are work camps.
That is precisely it. So the official end of the convict leasing system occurred years ago in terms of an executive order. But in terms of the system of mass incarceration, where we're literally able to lease out and rent out black and brown bodies from behind bars, continues to the present day. Right. So that's just one form of essentially income and wealth theft. In terms of housing, so if we look at the HUD that Ben Carson leads today, if you look at its HUD and its institutional predecessors, the federal government going back to the 30s and before sanctioned, supported, as a matter of official policy, segregation. So in other words, devaluing black homes, devaluing black neighborhoods, stripping away wealth in a systematic fashion and form. In other words, there were maps of cities that were literally divided up: blacks, Poles, Jews, Italians, in ways that literally diminish and decrease black wealth. So it's not merely bodies, not merely housing, but also income. So where we had policies of separate but equal. So we had Jim Crow, we had separate but equal up as official doctrine and policy of the country up until the Brown decision. Literally, black people were relegated to the least paying jobs, racially coded and designated jobs in ways that suppress wealth and suppress income. But it goes even further. Look at land theft. Across the South, black communities and black individuals literally had their land stolen from them at the point of guns, through legal chicanery, through all manner of strategies to keep black people wealthy. And lest the point keep black people poor, lest the point be missed, if we look at Tulsa, if we look at Memphis, if we look at Wilmington, North Carolina, where at the point of guns and mobs, literally black businesses were burned, land was stolen, and literally communities were made poor. And so this is not a matter of long ago history. This is not a matter of merely the ugly epic of slavery. This is a matter of an ongoing policy to keep certain Americans, African Americans in particular, poor, landless, and not in control of their very bodies.
Yeah, I got it. Professor, we're hitting a hard break here. I'm wondering if you can stick around for about another 10 minutes and continue this conversation.
Most certainly.
Thank you so much. This is fascinating, and I want to do a little bit more of a deep dive. We'll be right back. It's 18 minutes past the hour. We're talking with Professor Reverend Cornell William Brooks of Harvard's Kennedy School.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And we'll be back with our conversation with Professor Brooks in just a moment. And welcome back. Professor, you haven't been on our show before, but just what's going on right now is we are still on the air on our television stations, nonprofit television stations. We're still on the air on our Pacifica stations. Our commercial stations have gone to a commercial break for 4 minutes. When we come back from that 4 minutes, I've got to read a 1-minute spot, and then we'll continue the conversation on everything. So whatever we say here, we'll just recap real quickly when we come back and rejoin our commercial stations, if that's all right with you. So, speaking of redlining and all this stuff, I saw a report just a couple days ago that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, this thing that Elizabeth Warren created, had been basically crippled by the Trump administration. And as a consequence of this, these reverse mortgages were being aggressively marketed to older African-American families, and the default rate was an order of magnitude greater than it was for white families. And the article characterized it as saying, these were, quote, unsophisticated homebuyers, which A, might be just, racist code, or B, people, if it's literally the first time or the first generation to own a home, they may not have the familiarity with that. And in fact, I think that multi-generational familiarity with things like how to deal with equity is something that white people have, as an advantage right out of the gate over many black people over the years. I mean, going back to the end of slavery. So I'm curious your thoughts on all of that, and if that's just another symptom of this kind of ongoing redlining by another name.
Absolutely, and I would even call into question the assumption that people who are, quote, unsophisticated merit being fiscally and financially preyed upon. So in other words, when you go to a doctor, because you don't have a degree or background in surgery, it does not mean that you're a candidate for a botched job or a misdiagnosis.
Or unnecessary surgery just to make the guy some money.
Right. And so in fact, the nomenclature, I was a fair housing, fair lending attorney at the U.S. Department of Justice. So I prosecuted these kinds of cases. And the nomenclature for the financial industry is, we will determine if you're qualified for a loan, right? So in other words, it is the person who makes the loan, it is the person who extends the credit, who determines whether or not you're qualified. That implies that you're going to do the work ethically, honestly. And there's no exemption in either criminal law or civil law for you preying upon people who are unsophisticated. In other words, you don't get to perpetuate a fraud simply because someone is unsophisticated. There's no loophole for that in either the Constitution or as a matter of regulation or a statute.
Yeah, although it seems to be a common business practice, I mean, regardless of race.
It is a common, but I'll put it this way. When I was an attorney at the Justice Department, if you said to me, well, you know what, this landlord violated the Fair Housing Act, and the tenant or the home borrower was unsophisticated, I would say that's irrelevant.
Right. Or if anything, they are deserving of more protection. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we have agencies that protect us from predatory corporations, it seems. We'll be right back. We're going to rejoin our commercial stations here. We're talking with the professor and Reverend Cornell William Brooks of Harvard's Kennedy School. We'll be right back. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
The professor and Reverend Cornell William Brooks. He's a professor of the practice of public leadership and social justice at Harvard's Kennedy School and former president of the NAACP. Professor Brooks, we were talking about predatory lending, predatory business practices, all these kinds of things being directed against people of color, and the disproportionate, the whole blowback. One of the other myths that I'd love you to explode, whenever or very frequently when we talk about race on this program, you get some white guy from the South calling in and saying, yeah, look at all these cities that are filled with black people, and they're all run by black people, and they're all in poverty, and it's a terrible thing, and they just don't know what they're doing. And you get the whole racist subtext to all this. How do we, help me out in responding to that without going into a long history lesson about, of course, this is the result of 400 years of process, or is that the appropriate response?
Well, I think the appropriate response to stereotyping, myth-making, and scapegoating are
just to call it out.
And reason and morality.
Yeah.
So, in other words, when someone engages in scapegoating and myth-making and stereotyping as just a polite way of calling black communities the N-word in a nice way, you got to call it out.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I like to point people back to the record, right? So in other words, when we talk about the criminality, the presumed criminality of cities, look at the facts, right? So in other words,
we have just 1 minute, by the way, before we hit a hard break. My apologies for interrupting.
Sure. So, in other words, when we look at the ways in which, as a matter of essentially government policy, people have been preyed upon in terms of housing discrimination, in terms of graft and corruption. Crime in cities is not a new thing. The Italians were accused of it. The
Irish,
Spanish, the Irish. You pick the group. Any history of immigration in this country is a history of one group being called out by another group for being less than the dominant group. And those are the facts. The other part of it is something called the geography of crime, which essentially says in any poor space, the crime rate goes up no matter who's in it.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Professor Reverend Cornell William Brooks, the professor of practice in public leadership and social justice at Harvard's Kennedy School. Thank you so much for dropping by today and talking with us.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Very, very useful and informative conversation. We'll be back.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Coming up on 28 minutes past the hour, we'll continue the conversation with you right after this. Boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious Nazi POTUS. The second is that's a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift, and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us, hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant, featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there, and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet. Originally I was saying, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have. I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums, but the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV. And if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. And just a quick FYI, Friday, tomorrow night, I'll be on the Bill Maher Show. And on Saturday in Los Angeles at 3 o'clock, the KPFK Speaker Series. On Sunday in Seattle at 7:30 p.m., I'll be at Town Hall. They've already sold over 700 tickets to that. There's still, I think, 100 or so left. On Tuesday night at 7 o'clock, I'll be at the First Church in Berkeley. Friday, I'll be in Chicago at Frugal Muse Bookstore in Darien. Saturday, Minneapolis, and actually in St. Paul at Next Chapter Booksellers. And then Friday, July 12th, we'll be in Philadelphia. And specifically for that Friday, July 12th, our association, we have this affiliation with Free Speech TV. And part of the fundraising drive that we're doing right now for them, this is the very last week of it, is giving away, in exchange for a substantial donation, giving away a dinner at this extraordinary restaurant in Philadelphia, the Le Virtue Italian restaurant. The owner, Rusty Francis Cretarola, is on the line with us. Rusty, my apologies if I've mangled either the pronunciation of your name or your restaurant. Nick didn't pass that along to me. Do we have it all right?
You did it perfect.
Okay.
Perfectly, yeah, it's all good.
Great. So tell me about the new sanctuary movement and your restaurant. What is this? This is extraordinary.
Well, I mean, since the 2016, and actually we should have been involved earlier, but we were pushed to it. Our restaurant is made possible by the work of immigrants from all over Mexico, Italy, Canada, Nicaragua, and it's been impossible for us to ignore what's been going on and what's been happening in their lives and the interruptions to their families. And we have decided to team as much as we can with the New Sanctuary Movement of Philadelphia. And currently what they're doing is hosting a couple families or several families in the Germantown area of Philadelphia. They've taken sanctuary in churches, and we've supported them and other immigrant movements, including doing dinners for undocumented immigrants, basically as a way of acknowledging the debt, especially our industry, but the entire country, but especially the industry we're in owes to immigrants.
Yeah, it's a remarkable thing. And July 12th, we're having the dinner for Free Speech TV donors, and to get in on that, go to freespeech.org. You can get all the information. But tell us about the kind of food you guys serve.
Well, my grandparents were from Abruzzo, so it's the cuisine of Abruzzo, and Abruzzo you would think of as sort of a bridge between central and southern Italy. So truffles and mushrooms and things from central Italy, and hot pepper and tomato and things from Campania, Calabria areas or that are south of Abruzzo. So it's sort of a very traditional, very hardcore kind of what the ground zero. Philadelphia was the ground zero for people from Abruzzo. So it's sort of the food of the diaspora from that part of Italy.
That's remarkable. Rusty, you're doing great work, and I look forward to meeting you on July 12th. And the restaurant, again, is Le Virtue Italian Restaurant in Philadelphia. Rusty, thanks so much for dropping by.
No worries. Thank you.
Great talking with you. To continue our conversations, George in Chicago. Hey, George, what's on your mind today?
Yeah, when you were speaking with Lamar Waldron about the criminal foundation of Richard Nixon's political career,
Yeah, this was in the last hour for people who just tuned in. That we just did an hour with Lamar Waldron on the associations, the criminal associations of Nixon, Trump, and how Nixon actually helped Trump and predicted that one day Trump would be president. Back to you, George. Excuse me.
Thank you, Tom. I was just wondering, with that kind of a background, and have you and Lamar in your various researches over the years uncovered anything to indicate why Dwight Eisenhower was willing to accept Nixon? Did he or his people do any checking into Nixon's background? And why would they have accepted a relative unknown like him when you had prominent people like Senator Taft of Ohio, who was known as Mr. Republican and was well respected, or even Governor Dewey of New York, who would run as a presidential candidate? Why did Eisenhower accept Nixon?
I have some speculation, but I'm reluctant to share it because I don't honestly know the answer to that question. Lamar and I worked for 18 years, literally, on these two books on the JFK assassination, Legacy of Secrecy and Ultimate Sacrifice. But I did not work with Lamar on his books on Watergate and on Nixon. So that's a question for Lamar that I can't answer, George. I'm sorry. My guess would be that Eisenhower was seen as a Democrat. In fact, everybody assumed that in '52 that he was going to run for the Democratic primary. He ended up running as a Republican, for the Republican primary and as a Republican, and that Nixon was well known in '52 as kind of a Joe McCarthy Republican, as a hardcore right-wing anti-communist Republican. And so my theory would be that Nixon was put on the ticket to bring in the Republican base, basically, because Eisenhower didn't have the Republican base. Eisenhower was, one of Franklin Roosevelt's top generals. But I could be wrong on that. And the bigger question that you ask, why didn't he look into his past? I don't know. But next time we have Lamar on, I'll try to remember to ask him. George, thanks a lot for the call. Lester in Denver, Colorado. Hey, Lester, what's on your mind?
As far as that Mueller report and this impeachment thing, in view of how the Republicans are playing this, I think the Democrats need different strategies to get this information out to the public.
Right.
Because you remember the woman at the Amash town hall where she said that she didn't have a clue that there was anything bad in the Mueller report. I think they should use they should have somebody just like you read part of the Mueller report and then do some kind of like an animation. The saying a picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm thinking a video might be worth 1,000,000, and put some kind of a depiction of what's going on as far as that Mueller report, showing. I
think somebody ought to dramatize it, Lester.
What's that now?
Somebody ought to dramatize it. I mean, you got people like Rob Reiner and all these other famous producers and actors in Hollywood who are horrified about Trump. They should put together a series of little short videos, 2, 3, 4-minute videos, where literally actors are playing the roles of the characters or playing the role of a grand jury or something.
That's what I'm talking about. They could even use animation.
Yeah.
And depict people, going in and out of these meetings and then coming to the public and lying about it. And that's the thing to get me. If it was nothing to this, I would just constantly keep this in their face. If it was nothing to this, why was so many people lying?
Yeah, and why do they continue to lie? Yeah, and why is Trump continuing to stonewall? I'm with you, Lester. Right. I think that's a great suggestion. Thanks so much for the call. Ben in Portland. Hey, Ben. Ben? No Ben. Okay, let's try Paul in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Paul, you're on the air.
Hi, Tom. I'll probably see you at Netroots Nation. It's in Philadelphia, as you said. And
great.
Sooner or later, everybody comes to Philadelphia.
Okay.
I wanted to talk about the reparations issue. Unfortunately, the Reverend isn't on there, but I'll get right to the main topic that I wanted to say. The nation of Haiti was a French colony. It was a slave colony, and they had a revolution, after which the French nation demanded reparations for the loss of property and economic production.
And Haiti paid those reparations for 150 years, as I recall.
There you go. And up until 1947. I mean, here you have France
from 1802 or something?
1947.
No, but I mean, it started. The Haitian Revolution was in the first decade of the 1800s, wasn't it?
Right.
During Jefferson's presidency?
1815, right around the Napoleonic era. Yeah, and it was enforced by a naval blockade. They put a gun to their heads. They had to pay, and they had to pay in gold.
Right.
So, the other thing is, and this is what I wanted to mention to the Reverend, in any discussion about reparations for slavery, it's a global issue, not just for African Americans, because American banks received much of the gold from Haiti that went to New Orleans. Many of the French slave owners escaped with their skins, with their lives, and the reason why the port of New Orleans was as wealthy and successful as it is, and if you look at it, you wonder, like, how does it even exist? One of the reasons it existed was a huge infusion of capital, of gold, by the French, the white Frenchmen who left and got a huge amount of reparations from Haiti.
Wow.
There's money in America from Haitian reparations to Frenchmen. I mean, it is. It's staggering. And the president of France, Hollande, he actually went to Haiti, I think, in about 4 or 5 years ago, first one to do it. And the only thing he offered was to pay the moral debt. I mean, even the French don't want to open up their wallet for actual monetary reparations. So it's going to be a tough row to hoe for the Reverend. But I think there's linkage there with many people in the United States that would be more than happy to join up, because there's grievances across the board. And I think you as well as many people know the problem of capitalism. It's exploitation, and it comes in many different forms. Many people have been basically had their wealth confiscated from them. And more recently, I've worked for HUD, and this is real quick again, I'll get to the point. People lost their homes in Philadelphia during what was called deindustrialization, black and white. Those homes wound up into the hands of HUD, Housing and Urban Development, because of foreclosures that were backed by the FHA and the VA and regular banks.
Right.
There were
quick to your point, Paul. Real quick.
Homes in Philadelphia that were confiscated by banks.
Yeah, I got it. Paul, thanks very much for the call, and thanks for watching us on Roku. It's 45 minutes past the hour. We're going to check in with Talk Media News in just a moment.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And in 4 minutes, we'll be checking in with Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Stick around. And welcome back. Ben in Portland, Oregon. Hey, Ben, what's on your mind today?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, just fine.
Okay, I wanted to talk about reparations for African Americans.
Yeah, if you're going to talk to me on a speakerphone, please put it right up to your mouth, so that because right now it sounds like you're talking to me from the toilet.
I need to listen to do this here. There's somebody next to me here. What I'm talking about is, I think, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, Native Americans should be first, and African Americans second.
Well, I think they should come along at the same time. If you know, I don't. I mean, slaves were imported into this. Enslaved people were brought to this country within 10 years of the founding of Jamestown in 1607. So, and the first, and the first slaver was Christopher Columbus. He exported slaves back to Spain, and he was also the first person to engage in genocide of Native Americans. He wiped out the Taino people in Haiti and in Hispaniola, Haiti and Dominican Republic, over the course of about a 15 or 20 year period. So, yeah,
I'm aware of that. I just don't want Native Americans to be forgotten.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in fact, the Holocaust against Native Americans, the genocide against Native Americans, was extraordinary. I mean, it was literally the most effective one in the history of the world. So, yeah, and
I would say that's even worse than the Holocaust.
Well, these are. I don't think the comparison is useful. But it
Gotcha.
was, because there's nuance in both of them, frankly, and you get people who say, well, a lot of the Native Americans died from disease. Yeah, but that disease wouldn't have spread across the country if white people weren't spreading across the country using guns as a way to do it, for example. So yeah, there's a bunch of issues there. Okay, thanks a lot, Ben, for the call. I get your point, and I'm with you. Ron in Buffalo, New York. Hey, Ron, what's up?
Yeah, okay. In my heart of hearts, I realize there should be some type of reparations for African Americans. I mean, we can go through the scenarios, preaching to the choir here. But are you worried? I'm very worried because it's all over the right-wing blogs, and they're now referring to it on Fox and another giveaway for minorities and forgetting about white people and all this kind of stuff. At this point, isn't this playing into their hands?
I think that at a certain level, it's not so much that it's playing into their hands. This is a conversation, as a professor said, that's 150 years too late. But you're absolutely right that the Republican Party, I mean, going back to Richard Nixon's Southern strategy, Lee Atwater's plan to blackify the Democratic Party and whiten the Republican Party, in the 60s and 70s and 80s, and certainly during the Reagan administration. The extent to which Republicans can shout out to their white base, oh, those black people just want to take some money from you. Yeah, absolutely. This is something that they will use. But frankly, Ron, they would have used it whether there were hearings or not.
Well, I mean, that just scares me that, because if you try to tell a white person that's lost his job, and it gets to these whose cross is bigger to bear kind of arguments.
No, I get it.
And it scares me. I just don't know. It's not wrong to do it, but it's politically, I just think it's kind of dangerous.
I think arguably it would have been better to do it after the election, but frankly, justice delayed is justice denied. I mean, there's a certain point at which you say, we're going to do what's right regardless of the political considerations. Ron, thank you for the call. I absolutely understand what you're saying. We'll be back with Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Stick around. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell a list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Back, let's check in with Talk Media News and find out what's going on in the world today. This report brought to you by goatsfortheoldgoat.com and Loving What You Do, Ellen Ratner's new book. On the line with us is former Ohio Congressman Bob Ney, author of Sideswiped. Bob, welcome back to the program. What's at the top of your hit parade with regard to the news today?
Well, Tom, thank you. The drone obviously is in the top of our news that we're putting out there. There's a lot of stories, the visit of the Premier of China to North Korea, but the number one story really is the drone, because it also leads into some actions of Congress and some statements by the Secretary of State. But it was a drone that Iran admits that it shot down, and Iran says it was over its airspace. We, the United States, say that it was in international airspace, and that becomes, of course, the argument. Right. The president, Tom, I don't know if you've read this, but just a statement that I just saw made a very puzzling statement. And his statement was that he thought maybe somebody accidentally did it in Iran. Somebody made a mistake, is what he said. Now, that's interesting because, as you know, John Bolton, his national security advisor, will say this is, obviously aggression. The Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo, says this is direct aggression. Then you have the president coming out. First, he did a tweet, which was, aimed at Iran. But then he came out when he was meeting with Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, and said, probably somebody made a mistake. And I find that to be a baffling statement. But it sort of fits in with what we hear up on Capitol Hill, which is there's an internal struggle between Pompeo and Bolton mainly on one side, and the president himself and some advisors on the other side, where the president's trying to taper down.
Bob, there's two ways to say that. I mean, I saw Trump's tweet, Iran just made a big mistake. I mean, that could be Iran just made a big mistake, or it could be Iran just made a big mistake. I mean, is it like, hey, guys, you got too close to my face, I'm going to punch you? Or is it, oh, I get it, you made an error?
Well, the first one was the Iran made a mistake, I'm going to get him.
Right.
Then at the press pool, when he was with the prime minister, it was like, I think maybe somebody made a mistake, we're going to look into it. So
I wonder if Trudeau said that to him.
Possibly. I mean, look, the rest of the world, I was saying this when I was asked today on other stations, to give a breakdown of Iran, and they said, well, this could start a war, multiple countries' war against Iran. I said, no, this is a lone situation. Make no bones about that. It is the United States. Other countries do not want us to get into this, and it's not going to be a follow along.
Well, don't you think Saudi Arabia and Israel want us to get into this?
Well, of course, yes, those two. But in the actual Western world, European world, they don't want it.
Right.
But yes, of course, Saudi Arabia wants a war. Like I said, the Saudi royal family, they will sit in Las Vegas and watch us conduct a war, which is what they like to do. They won't be involved themselves, because that's the other issue. If we're so upset, as John Bolton says, about the Saudi tankers, let Saudi Arabia go fly their warships. They have them. Let them go do something about it. That's what I hear up on Capitol Hill also. And by the way, Tom, a lot of Republicans are not really expressing the amount of fear they have. Now, you have Senator Tom Cotton, who out and out wants Iran bombed today. Right. But you have a lot of Republicans who are starting to wonder what's going to go on, which leads to the vote that was in the House. I had voted originally, as many people did. I could name, some famous names that voted for that authority for George Bush.
Right after 9/11, yeah.
Right.
And now the Trump administration is saying that there's Al-Qaeda in Iran, which makes no sense. Al-Qaeda is a Sunni group that was, evolved out of Saudi Wahhabism, and Iran is a Shia country. They hate Al-Qaeda. But it seems to me like the only reason the Trump administration is mentioning Al-Qaeda in the context of Iran is because then they can use that 2001 AUMF as justification to strike Iran.
Correct. The AUMF specifically mentions Al-Qaeda and other entities.
Right.
And you are exactly correct, Tom. There is no reason to say Al-Qaeda and Iran in the same breath. Everybody on Capitol Hill, everybody in the Pentagon, everybody in the rest of the world that follows this, they know Iran hates Al-Qaeda. Al-Qaeda has killed Iranians. They have committed acts of terrorism on Iran itself. So to say that triggered, of course, a lot of speculation in the U.S. House that the Trump administration was going to go to war. So they have now, passed a resolution to undo in the House at least. Now, I don't think it has a lot of life in the Senate unless the president takes some type of military action. Then some members of the Senate, 22 seats are up for grabs, may then try to do something to insulate themselves, to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And so I think that the main point that has to be looked at is that resolution was supposed to be anyway a temporary measure. It has been now used to conduct military exercises in 14 different situations in the last 18 years.
Remarkable.
So I think the House made a very good move on that.
Yeah, it really does need to be reversed. What else is up? We have have about 10 seconds here, Bob.
Oh, okay. Okay. Just the give and take of Cory Booker and Joe Biden, and Nancy Pelosi has entered the fray to defend Joe Biden.
Yeah. Okay. All righty. Bob Ney with Talk Media News. Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, Tom.
Great talking with you. I do appreciate it. Stick around. We'll be back. Coming up next, we're going to be talking with Jay O'Neill. He's a middle school teacher in Charleston, West Virginia. And the teachers in West Virginia are under assault from the Republicans. We'll tell you all about that after the break, and we'll continue our conversation on all the topics we've been talking about today.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
We say fight back!
Boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexist Nazi POTUS. The second is that's a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift, and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us, hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet, originally I was saying, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums. But the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV. And if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now, 877-378-8669. Every day here on the Thom Hartmann Program, Louise and I and our team, Sean, Nate, Shira, Dave, Chase, Sue, Nigel, Ron, we all work to put together the very, very best show we possibly can. And there's an enormous amount of work that goes into the show. And one of the things that comes out of that is a lot of content, a lot of specific information that we go through and we dig out and, we want to share with you. And Sue puts that into our newsletter every week. And I think you will, if you don't already receive our newsletter, it comes in email every day, about an hour after we're off the air, or maybe a couple hours after we're off the air. And Sue goes through and pulls literally every link to every story that we talked about and puts it into the newsletter. It's free. We don't sell the list or anything. You complete safety and security. There's no charge. There's no nothing. Just, plug in your email address over at thomhartmann.com. And you get signed up for the newsletter. It's all fairly obvious. You'll see it on the website. So check it out, thomhartmann.com. Thank you.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And welcome back to the third hour of our program. On the line with us right now is Jay O'Neill. He's a middle school teacher in Charleston, West Virginia, a member of the West Virginia Education Association. He's founder of the West Virginia United Caucus and creator of the West Virginia Public Employees United Facebook group, which served as a catalyst and organizing hub for the West Virginia teachers and service personnel strike of 2018, which is pretty high profile. The website, WV, as in West Virginia, WVUnitedCaucus.org, and the Twitter handle is CaucusWV. Jay, welcome to the program.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us. It's always great talking to a teacher too. It's you're doing God's work. So tell us about the challenge or the struggle right now that West Virginia teachers are facing relative to the Republican Party in that state.
Yeah,
it's is this not partisan?
No, it's mostly partisan.
Okay.
It's kind of like the Empire Strikes Back. We had a huge teacher strike in 2018, and then this year they really came after us. We're one of 6 states that currently does not have charter schools. and they are pushing school privatization and charters and things very hard here right now.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So how are they going after you beyond that, or is that enough?
No, that's enough. No, they're doing other things. They've tried to get laws passed that would weaken things like our seniority. They tried to attack our unions with a paycheck protection law, which is basically just union busting tactics. They tried to put in kind of an anti-strike clause and, firing teachers who go on strike, all that stuff. So not just privatization, they're going after us directly as well.
Right. With regard to the charter schools, what's your understanding and experience and knowledge about charter schools versus public schools, and why would the Republican Party be pushing them so hard in West Virginia?
Yeah, so my basic view is that they're a form of privatization. Somebody could set up it would technically be a nonprofit and apply for a charter to have this school, and that sounds really nice, but the problem is then these nonprofits contract out all the school services, usually to for-profit companies. So, for transportation, for food, and even for the management of the school, nationwide now we have these things called EMOs, Education Management Organizations. There's chains of them, and they're for-profit, and they exist to manage schools, and they're literally making money off our kids.
Wow, amazing. So what are teachers in West Virginia doing in response to this? What are you doing in response to this? We're talking with Jay O'Neill, a middle school teacher in Charleston, West Virginia, and a member of the West Virginia Education Association.
Yeah, so back in February, they were trying to push through a bill very quickly like this. We actually went on strike statewide again for 2 days in order to kill the bill. Well, Republicans, that wasn't good enough for them, so they called a special session this summer. And unfortunately, the bill now has just passed our House of Delegates in the summer. It's hard for teachers to go on strike during the summer. So, we've done all the normal things they tell you to do. We've called our delegates. We've emailed, we've lobbied, we've met with them. They had education forums across the state, and actually 88% of the people that attended said no charters, no education savings accounts, no privatization, and yet still they're ramming it through. So, we're trying to regroup. We're trying to figure out new strategies and tactics to use, but it's a real fight here.
Amazing. So I'm assuming if somebody wants to know what's going on in West Virginia or who wants to, pitch in and help out some way, particularly if they live in West Virginia, wvunitedcaucus.org is the website?
Yeah, that's a great place to start. And then you can catch us on Twitter and Facebook as well, and there's links from there.
Okay, and for Facebook, what would they search on?
I think it's Caucus WV.
Caucus WV. Okay, Caucus WV I know is the Twitter handle, so same thing for Facebook. Jay, I wish you the very best. Would you keep us up to date on how it goes?
Definitely, for sure.
Okay, thanks a lot. Jay O'Neill with the West Virginia Education Association and West Virginia Public Employees United. Great conversation. Thank you, Jay. Appreciate it. John in Morris, Illinois. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
I was just going to say we need to get two birds with one stone. We got to push for the impeachment. We got to push for impeachment now, because that way we can expose, even if it doesn't get past the Senate, we can expose all the lies the Senate uses. Take down Mitch the bitch. And put Bill, the guy from Illinois.
I'm sorry, John. I get it that you're upset and you want to, but I just don't want to be using that kind of language. Jesse in Bothell, Washington. Hey, Jesse, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for taking my call. Earlier, a gentleman suggested that a video be made of the Mueller report.
Yeah.
And I want to let him know, and all your listeners out there, it has been done. PBS did a summary of the Mueller report. It's on PBS NewsHour. It's posted on YouTube about three days ago, and it's titled "All of the Mueller Report's Major Findings in Less Than 30 Minutes." And the reporters do a great job summarizing both Volume 1 and Volume 2. A good summary of all the instances of Trump's obstruction of justice. And after you watch it, the viewer can see the conclusion clear as day. Trump must be impeached for high crimes and misdemeanors. So please go to PBS or find it on YouTube, and it's just a nice summary of the Mueller report.
I get it. And in fact, a couple of people tweeted that to me. I'm going to have to look at it after I get off the air today because I'm heading down to L.A. this afternoon. But I will definitely check it out. Jesse, thank you for the call. It's great to hear from you.
Thank you.
Michael in Winter Haven, Florida. Hey, Michael, what's on your mind today?
Hi, Tom. I kind of agree with the caller. They called earlier, but I won't use the language.
Thank you.
But this is about
Feel
Mitch
free.
McConnell.
I mean, not to use the language, but to go off on McConnell. Go for it.
You talked not long ago about impeaching Mitch McConnell, and I was thinking about the impeachment process where the House brings the charges, and then they send it over to the Senate. Can Mitch McConnell not bring that to the floor? Can he decide not to...
No, he has. My understanding is that he has to hold a vote.
Okay.
But here's the thing: a majority vote. It only takes a majority vote in the House to impeach. In other words, to indict somebody. But to actually convict him and remove him from office, that takes 2/3 vote. That takes a 2/3 vote in the Senate. So there's going to have to be. I don't recall the exact number, but it would be something on the order of 15 Republicans are going to have to jump on this thing. So that's a pretty big lift. No, he can't stop it, to the best of my knowledge. Okay.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks a lot, Sam. Good to hear from. Excuse me, Michael. Good to hear from you, Sam in Waynesville, North Carolina. Sam, what's on your mind today?
Yes, maybe I'm a little bit different. I don't want to talk about impeachment or anything like that, but I would like to talk about the Iran situation.
Yes.
That's going on now. I thought Trump was supposed to be peaceful president. But he surrounded himself with a bunch of, he talked about draining the swamp.
Yeah.
And he got swampier,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
he's got
something.
He's got a bunch of corrupt billionaires in his cabinet. I mean, it's bizarre.
It sure is, and that's all. That's since he's been in there. That's all they talk about is war, and that's all you hear. And for the money that they spend on weapons, they can help out with health care. And that's just my opinion.
Yeah, very well said, Sam. Sam, thanks a lot for the call, and thanks for watching us on YouTube. I'm with you. We have our, speaking of YouTube, we have our YouTube poll, our subscriber poll, and 3,100 votes. Will Trump use the Gulf of Oman, that's the drone that was shot down, will he use that as a pretext for an illegal war? And of 3,100 votes, 86% of you said yes, he will. 10% said no, he won't. 4% said I couldn't care less. Here are some of the top. And I ask you, I mean, how do you, do you think that Trump is spoiling for a war, or is this all Bolton and Pompeo? And if he wants a war, does he not want the war now? Does he want the war closer to the election? Is that the deal? Because, he kept tweeting that Obama was going to have a war with Iran so he could get himself reelected. So obviously he has thought this way. Yet he campaigned on, no more stupid wars. In fact, he trashed George W. Bush, which was supposed to be Republican heresy. Do you think he's going to pull it off? Do you think that it'll work? I don't know. Who's going to stop World War III? I think this is a really good question. Reparations. We've been talking about reparations, by the way. I just wanted to bring that back up. Your thoughts on how we should do this, or how we could do this. But anyhow, the question, will Trump use the Gulf of Oman as a pretext for an illegal war? Some of the top comments. Rebecca said he wants a war. That's why he hired Bolton, a war to distract from his crimes. See, I'm not sure that that's true. I think he hired Bolton because he's an idiot. That Trump just doesn't, he doesn't dig deep enough to understand who the people are that he's putting in these positions. And that's why he keeps putting people in these jobs who have all these scandals and are so subject to blackmail and all kinds of other things. Michael Hartney says he will have a war if he can. Jennifer Delaney says, absolutely, Mike Pompeo is always up for a war, and so is the mainstream media. Well, in the mainstream media, you've absolutely got that right. I mean, war, for example, the first Gulf War made Wolf Blitzer's career, which is not to say Wolf Blitzer is some kind of warmonger, but, that war, people get promoted much more rapidly in the military and in the media during time of war. It's very simple, straightforward stuff. Gail Murrer said they lied to us about the Lusitania to start World War I. They lied to us about the Gulf of Tonkin to start the Vietnam War. They lied about Saddam's weapons of mass destruction to stop the Iraq War. They lied about chemical attacks to keep bombing Syria. Do you really think we shouldn't be suspicious when oil tankers are attacked and they blame Iran? But then Brock Collins says, no, Trump's base will not let him engage in a war with Iran. I'm not sure. I think Trump's base might, walk off the end of a plank into water filled with crocodiles if he told them to. You've got some pretty dedicated followers there. In fact, dedicated to the point of being cult members, which brings us back to our conversation in the first hour with Lamar Waldron about all the parallels between the criminality of Donald Trump and the overt criminality of Richard Nixon.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Not to mention that they both shared the same criminal lawyer, Roy Cohn. They both had the same advisor, Roger Stone. It's like it's the Nixon administration all over again. And welcome back. Some other interesting things that I want to get into here that are in the news that the Trump administration argued in court. This was yesterday, reported today. This is from courthousenews.com, and I picked this up off Democratic Underground from K. Pete. The Trump administration argued in court that this is what K. Pete's commentary, that the government is not required to give these refugees, that specifically the children of the refugees, that the Trump administration does not have to give them soap or toothbrushes, and that they can force them to sleep on concrete floors in frigid, overcrowded cells. This was before the Ninth Circuit court, arguably the most liberal of the circuits. It's the California, I believe it runs from Alaska down to, well, I'm not actually sure. So anyhow, it's the West Coast Court, but the Ninth Circuit. And this is from Courthouse News. All three judges, it was a three-judge tribunal, all three judges appeared incredulous during the hearing in San Francisco, in which the Trump administration challenged previous legal findings that it's violating a landmark class action settlement by mistreating undocumented immigrant children at U.S. detention facilities. Judge Marcia Berzon, U.S. Circuit Court Judge Marcia Berzon, asked of Sarah Fabian, who is a lawyer from the Justice Department. She said, "You're really going to stand up and tell us that being able to sleep isn't a question of safe and sanitary conditions?" And William Fletcher, U.S. Circuit Judge, also said, "Are you arguing seriously that you do not read the agreement?" Now, this was the consent agreement between the Trump administration and the court that, that had to do with saying you can't lock up kids anymore, which the Trump administration has largely ignored. Are you arguing seriously that you do not read that agreement as requiring you to do anything other than what I just described? Cold all night long, lights on all night long, sleeping on concrete, and you've got an aluminum foil blanket? Fletcher asked Fabian. "I find that inconceivable that the government would say that that is safe and sanitary." And, I absolutely agree. The other issue that I wanted to bring up and I wanted to get into, and I think we will in a few minutes here at some length, is homelessness. How do we best deal with homelessness in this world? In Portland, Oregon, town where I live, the city council just voted, I'm not sure how recent this was, but voted to spend $1 million moving giant rocks into places where homeless people sleep right now to make it really hard to sleep there because there's not a flat ground anymore. It's all kinds of giant rocks. Why not spend $1 million on building housing for homeless people? I mean, Denmark has done this. They've said, hey, the best way to deal with homelessness is to give people homes, right? I mean, they're homeless by definition. They don't have a home. So, isn't that the simplest way to deal with this? And, we have not been, frankly, effectively dealing with this. And I think that, we really need to. And this is a substantial issue, the homelessness. Denmark has, well, I'll get to that in just a minute. Stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Here's how Finland solved its homeless problem. Yes, I'm adding another topic here to our discussions for the day. How do we deal with homelessness? Here in Oregon, I was just mentioning just a moment ago, here in Oregon, the city council has voted, or in Portland, has voted to spend $1 million on moving giant rocks to places where homeless people are sleeping on the ground so that there's no ground to sleep on. Okay, that's not going to solve the homeless problem. First of all, the people, that's called rough sleeping. The people who are doing rough sleeping, the people who are sleeping outdoors in places where it's visible, that's actually a very small percentage of the homeless population. That's probably somewhere between 3 and 5% of the homeless population. The majority of homeless people are invisible. They're living with friends, they're living with neighbors, they're living with relatives, they're living in cheap hotels and motels, they're living in abandoned buildings. They are not visible. They are not the people who are sleeping on the streets. They are not the so-called urban campers that everybody gets all upset about. And when people talk about homeless people, that's what most people think of, are the people you see on the street as you're driving by and looking. But that's not the majority of homeless people. So how do we deal with homeless people? This fascinating report from the World Economic Forum titled, "Here's How Finland Solved Its Homeless Problem." This is weforum.org is the website. And they note in the last year in the United Kingdom, the number of people sleeping rough rose by 7%. In Germany, the last 2 years saw a 35% increase in the number of homeless, while in France, it's increased 50% in the last 11 years. Now, first of all, I'd point out these all correlate with increases in neoliberal economic policies, but that's a whole other thing. They say these are Europe's three biggest economies, and yet they haven't solved their housing problem. Across Europe, the picture is pretty much the same, except in Finland. There, the number of homeless is actually and steadily decreasing. What are they doing differently? Well, the Finns, they note, the World Economic Forum notes, have turned the traditional approach to homelessness on its head. You know, there's all kinds of reasons why people are homeless, right? They have a sudden job loss, their family breaks up, they've got substance abuse, they got mental health problems. Most homeless policies work on the premise that people have to sort these problems out first, and then you can deal with their housing. Finland does the exact opposite. They say, hey, if you're homeless, or if you might even be on the edge of homelessness, we're going to get you a home. And then we'll deal with your substance abuse, or the lack of family, or the lack of support network, or lack of education, or whatever it may be. So at the same time that they're given a home, now the homeless are given permanent homing on a normal lease. That can range from a self-contained apartment to a housing block with round-the-clock support. Tenants pay rent and are entitled to receive housing benefits. So you get a stipend from the Danish state, and then you use that to pay your rent. Depending on your income, they may contribute to the cost of the support services they receive. The rest is covered by the local government. And since they started this, thousands have benefited. They say at the same time of being given a home, they receive individually tailored support services. For instance, anyone can reserve an appointment with a housing advisor, receive advice on things like problems with paying the rent or applying for other government benefits. Also, financial and debt counseling services. Much of the service could be provided in their own home. This is called Housing First that Denmark is doing, unique among the European countries. And they say it works so well because it's a mainstream national homeless policy with a common framework. And, Finland uses its existing social housing, but they also bought apartments from the private market and built new housing blocks in order to provide homes to the homeless. There are no more homeless shelters in Finland. They have all been turned into supported housing. Now you say, what does this cost? Well, it costs about 9,600 euros a year, around $10,000 a year to provide a home to a homeless family or a homeless person. Right? But it turns out that when you look at what it costs to have homeless people, even if they don't have a home, it's more than $10,000 a year. So this actually giving them homes is actually the least expensive way to do this.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Plus, it keeps local communities intact. I mean, this is just extraordinary stuff. What do you think we should be doing about homelessness? boy, do we have a special offer today. This is incredible. Actually, two things going on. Number one, and many thanks to Gerhardt and Sonia in Wisconsin, to John in Burbank, California, to Mac in Colorado, to Anonymous in New York, to Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, to Suzanne in Catlett, Virginia, to David and Ellen in Mamaroneck, New York, to Beth in Charlotte, North Carolina, to Janet in Downers Grove, Illinois, to Anonymous in Sacramento, to Andrew in San Diego, to Tom in Ventura, California, and Goodbye Charlie in California. This group of donors put together a $20,000 match for today and tomorrow. These are the last 2 days of the pledge drive. This is it. These are our last chances to get anything even close to hitting our goals for the week. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Whatever you give, the amount that Free Speech TV gets will be twice that. Whatever you give will be doubled to Free Speech TV. And, like I said, we have done very, very poorly on this pledge drive. We are still way, way behind. And, we have to hit this. So there's that. And then the second kind of cool thing that happened, I'll tell you about in just a second. The premiums that we are offering, if you call now, 877-378-8669, make a contribution. The first is this new sticker, which says supercalifragilisticexpialidocious, sexist, Nazi, POTUS. The second is that's with a $20 gift. Also with a $20 gift, you could choose instead to get the Trump toilet paper, one roll of the Trump toilet paper. With a $50 gift, you could get the Trump toilet brush, complete with stand. This is high-class stuff. With a $60 gift, you get the toilet paper and the toilet brush, the Trump toilet paper. With a $120 gift, you get an autographed copy of my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. With a $20 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program stainless steel water bottle. With a $30 a month commitment, you get the Thom Hartmann Program tote bag and the stainless steel water bottle. They say democracy begins with you. With a $500 gift, we're going to do a virtual meet and greet on Zoom where I'll get together with those of you who've made a $500 gift, and we'll talk off the record about whatever's on your mind. With a $1,000 gift, we have two choices. One is come to Portland and hang out with us, hang out in the studio, watch the show being put together. Come on over we'll go to a restaurant nearby and have a nice lunch together. And, you can do that. Or if you're going to be coming to Netroots Nation, and I know people are coming from all over the country to Philadelphia in the second week of July for Netroots Nation. On July 12th, the restaurant Le Virtue, which is a top-of-the-line Italian restaurant featuring cuisine from the Italian region of Abruzzo. We're going to have our meet and greet. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Our meet and greet is going to be there and at this restaurant, and it's going to be a 3-course dinner featuring this traditional cuisine. So that's July 12th. The meet and greet, originally I was saying, we're going to have a cocktail party. No, it's going to be a whole sit-down dinner. In fact, on the program today, on the show today, and it may have, I'm pre-recording this before the beginning of the show, so it may have already happened or may be coming. But on today's show, we're actually interviewing Rusty, the owner of the restaurant, to talk about, this cool restaurant and how they're helping out Free Speech TV with this. They have been involved in a lot of charitable giving. They've got this sanctuary pudding dessert, which will be served during this meet and greet. And anyhow, it's a whole story, and you'll hear about it on the air. So those are the premiums. But the important thing is that we spread the word about progressive television. If you can make a contribution and you haven't yet, please call now, 877-378-8669. Today and tomorrow are your last chances. And so let's get them in today. Let's get them in now so there's, to avoid the stampede tomorrow. Call 877-378-8669. And if you can't make a contribution, could you do me one small favor and this network? Just a small favor. Try to tell over the course of the next week or so, try to tell at least 5 people about Free Speech TV with the hopes that at least one of them might watch and get hooked, right? Might watch and say, hey, this is cool. I need to watch this more regularly. And, of course, my pitch would be for my show, but there's a lot of good programming on Free Speech TV, and if you know that your friends or acquaintance or fellow workers or relatives has a particular interest that would be really spot on with instead Amy Goodman's show or Sonali's show or David's show or Stephanie's show or one of the other programs, cool. Tell them about that. But please spread the word about Free Speech TV. We need to increase the base of viewers for this television network. A, because it's a good thing for our democracy. It's a good thing for our republic. It's a good thing for this country. And B, because the more viewers we have, the more potential donors we have. There's always, a very, very small percentage of people who view who actually pick up the phone and call. And so our number one job has to be to expand that base of viewers. So please spread the good word and call now 877-378-8669.
Want to connect with the show online? You can find the Thom Hartmann Program on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
I may be coming to your city soon on our book tour for The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment. I'll be in New York, Washington, D.C., Portland, Los Angeles, Seattle, San Francisco, Chicago, and Minneapolis. Here I come. More information is available at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. 34 minutes past the hour. I will be on the Bill Maher Show tomorrow night, and then Saturday in Los Angeles. I'll be at 3 o'clock. Along with Stephanie Miller at the KPFK Speaker Series on Sunday night, 7:30 p.m. in Seattle at Town Hall. Tuesday of next week in San Francisco, actually in Berkeley at the Booksmith. Friday, I'll be at Chicago at Frugal Muse and Darien's. Saturday in Minneapolis at Next Chapter Booksellers, formerly Common Good Books in St. Paul. And then Friday, July 12th in Philadelphia. And so that's what's coming up. So homelessness, by the way, I kept, apparently somebody tweeted me that I was wandering back and forth between Finland and Denmark, and I have my whole entire life, even when I lived in Europe, mixed those two countries up. My apologies. They just kind of seem like, they're up there close to each other, right? The secondary Scandinavian countries, the Scandinavian countries that are not Norway or Sweden, right? And what I was describing was not Denmark, it was Finland. And the article, How Finland Solved Its Homeless Problem, from the World Economic Forum. So anyhow, a lot of stuff to discuss, so your thoughts on all this. Lee in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, you wanted to get back to the conversation about reparations? Lee, you're on the air.
That's not me, are you?
Yeah, if you're Lee in Greensburg.
No, I'm not Lee. I'm John.
Oh, okay. Are you in Greensburg, Pennsylvania?
No, I'm not in Greensburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay, John, I'm gonna Nick. He's on line 7, and somehow something's gone nuts here. Connie in Reno, Nevada. Are you Connie?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. Connie, what's up?
Well, talking about homelessness, Reno, I'm here in Reno, Nevada. We have a terrible homeless problem, especially since Tesla has moved in and just destroyed this value with doubling housing prices with minimum wage jobs. And I don't understand, and our city here and our county and our state, they just kick it back and forth and sometimes talk about transitional housing and when I don't understand why we can't just have like military-style barracks housing, give people a permanent cot and a lockbox. And then when I'm accosted in front of, like, Taco Bell, I could say, no, we have resources for you. You need to go there. Whereas now you do feel guilty because I know that at 6 o'clock in the morning, they kick them out in the freezing weather. It's just absurd. And I think trying to go with housing right now, there's too many that need too much right now. We need to just start with getting them all a warm place to sleep and a meal to eat. And if their choice, and many of them, drugs, alcohol, mental illness, run the gambit in that whole group. But there are a few that maybe don't want to work, and I don't care. I just don't want to be accosted all the time. Yeah. Let them sit on the cot all day. Yeah. And I just got to thank you for all your wonderful work and tell you that I just retired 2 weeks ago, and I'm hoping by fall to be up and going, getting people registered to vote. We were able to pass a wonderful bill here that reinstates voter rights for people who have been incarcerated.
Oh, that's great.
So my goal is to get out and get all those people registered.
Good on you, Connie. Good on you. Thanks so much for the call, and thanks for watching us on YouTube there from Reno. I appreciate it. Mark in Salem, Oregon. Hey, Mark. Thanks for listening to X-Ray FM. What's up? Mark?
Homelessness.
Yeah, go for it.
In Finland, they have the wages, I bet.
They do have higher wages in Finland. They have a higher minimum wage, and they have, or its equivalent, and they have a lot of unions. But they still have a homeless problem, as does Germany and France.
Yeah, but here's the point. Here's my point, Tom. We're going at this sort of the American way, at symptoms and not the cause.
Right.
We have over half of America have wages that don't even give them enough money to buy. A modest apartment. I mean, to rent a modest apartment. We need to raise wages.
So what you're saying is that the problem isn't a lack of housing. The problem is a lack of income that can provide for housing.
If we had appropriate wages, like we had in the 60s and 70s, which were close to appropriate, we would have hardly any homeless problem at all. And the people who were homeless would have serious problems that we could address because we'd have the tax revenue to address those problems because people were working at higher wages.
I think you're absolutely right, and that's a brilliant solution. Mark, thank you for sharing that in our conversation. It's an important one. Marianne in Butler, Pennsylvania. Marianne, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. I just called when you were talking about the causes of homelessness. My sister lives in the suburban Detroit area, and she's what's called an oncology social worker.
Mm-hmm.
And part of her job is helping... Hello?
Yeah, I said oncology being cancer, right, for people who don't know.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, part of her job is helping people that are living, out of their cars in order to afford their chemotherapy.
Oh, my God.
And she finds some places to stay. So that's also something that, because Finland, I believe, has, universal health care for everybody, wouldn't be a thing there, that we need to address if we're going to address homelessness, because a lot of bankruptcies are from the healthcare costs too.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And we're literally the only country in the world that has bankruptcies. 600,000 last year as a consequence of losing your health insurance or getting sick. In Canada, the number's 0. All across Europe, the number's 0.
Yeah, it's really, it's just so sad.
Yeah, it really is. Marianne, thank you. Excellent point. Kevin in Tracy, California. Kevin, what's on your mind?
Hello, Tom. I just wanted to say that I feel like I'm one of the invisible people that you mentioned. I have to stay with my sister, and I just read yesterday that 9 of the most expensive counties to live in the country are all in California. In San Francisco, I live in the Bay Area, in Tracy, in the more rural part. But the waiting lists are a minimum of 3 to 5 years long. I've been waiting to hear about housing in Southern Oregon, and I thought that would happen, but it's not happening at the moment. And I think one solution might be Andrew Yang's UBI of $1,000 a month for everybody. That would be a step in the right direction, to echo what the other caller said about income.
Right. Kevin, feel free to tell me. It's none of my damn business, but are you willing to share with us how, what your journey was like from having a home to being homeless?
Well, I mean, I'm staying with my sister, so what happened was the friend that I was living with died, and then I had a small trust, and that stopped. And it all started around the same time I started on dialysis. So I feel like a character from a Russian novel sometimes.
Wow, dialysis.
Just,
so you have chronic kidney disease or kidney failure of some kind?
Yes.
Wow. Tough stuff. Kevin, thank you very much for sharing your story with us. I appreciate the call. This is quite a topic. Betsy in Essex Junction, Vermont. Betsy, what's on your mind?
Hi, it's about homeless people. In Vermont, we've taken a different tact.
Okay.
The Academic Medical Center got together with the housing department, and they bought up small little hotels or little suites, motels.
Mm-hmm.
And they took homeless people who had used the emergency department quite frequently. Then that causes all the backup that we have there. Sure. And they gave them homes.
Right.
And they found that they used the emergency department almost 80% less. And they found themselves happy. They weren't having the mental crises that they've been having, and they started to settle in. And we have taken up, I think they've now bought 7 different of these little motel kind of things, so that they can do that. And they've bought a house that used to be a fraternity house. Wow. And I think it's really the right way to go. Like the woman in Arizona said, give them shelter, and they will find help.
Right. Yeah. It seems so intuitive. You know, if somebody's homeless, the first thing that they need is a home, and that's remarkable. Betsy, I didn't catch who's running that program in Vermont. I lived in Vermont for 10 years. We lived in Montpelier for 5 years. There was one homeless guy who a couple of the local restaurants would feed. He would walk around town, even in the winter. Sometimes he'd walk around barefoot. He was sleeping behind one of the restaurants. But everybody kind of knew him, and it was, I mean, again, this was like 1997. I'm guessing things are quite different now, 20 years later. But who started that in Vermont?
The Academic Medical Center. It's the UVM Medical Center.
Oh, so this is the University of Vermont's medical school, basically.
Yes, well,
and the hospital that they run.
Yes, the hospital, and they worked with the housing department in Vermont to find these places, and they went in on it together because it helps the state.
So with the government, with the state government's version of the Department of Housing and Urban Welfare, whatever they call it in Vermont.
Yeah.
Interesting. So a private-public partnership. That's fascinating. I need to learn more about that. Betsy, thank you for the heads up on that. Do you know where I can learn more information?
Go to, if you go to the Vermont House, go to legislature.gov, vermontlegislature.gov, and look into the Social Services Committee.
Right.
I think it originated in there with the housing department, or it could have been the general housing and military affairs.
Okay. Well, I'll poke around with DuckDuckGo and see what I come up with. Betsy, thank you very much. It's great to hear from you, and thanks for listening to SiriusXM. Martin in Seattle. Hey, Martin, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I'm listening to KBCS. I'm ADD too, so shout out for ADD. And answering your questions in order, I don't think President Bonespurs understands a thing about war or sacrifice. Number 2, I think, why aren't children of asylum seekers also considered legally asylum seekers and entitled the same thing as asylum seekers?
Right. Refugees,
third, homeless.
Yes.
Yeah, refugees. Third, homeless. In Seattle, there is a model of homeless management called Camp Second Chance. And people from different states and cities and counties are coming to study that model. It's a clean and sober facility, and there also they've got a factory that builds tiny houses, 120 square feet, brilliantly designed, ventilated, insulated tiny homes that they're putting up. So Camp Second Chance is something to look into, and the tiny home factory as well as a way to provide homes for people who don't have them.
Yeah, sounds fascinating. Martin, thank you very much for the call, and thanks for the tip on that. We'll continue our conversation in just a moment. We'll be back. It's 46 and a half minutes past the hour here on the Thom Hartmann Program. Stick around. We'll be right back with you.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And we'll be back with more of your calls in just a moment. And John in Tualatin, I'll be picking up your call in 4 minutes as soon as we rejoin our commercial station. Stick around. And welcome back. Dan in Albuquerque watching us on Free Speech TV. Hey, Dan, what's up?
Hey, Tom. I'd like to say if there was an impeachment inquiry, and even if it lasted through the next election, and the need arose to appoint a Supreme Court justice, couldn't we say that the you can't appoint a justice, and because Donald Trump is under investigation, the way he cheated, Obama. What do you think about that?
Well, what we have learned from the way that Mitch McConnell conducted himself during the last year of the Obama administration is that the Senate Majority Leader can basically do whatever he damn well pleases. He needs some thin gruel of rationale or rationalization, but that's all he had. I mean, basically, he said this is his last term, his last year in office. Which was just completely crazy. So, that's the situation, and in fact, Mitch McConnell was asked the other day, if anything were to happen to any of the existing justices, given that, next year is the last year, arguably, of the Trump administration, would you fill the seat? And he said, I'd fill the seat immediately. So. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Well, I believe that, but I mean, he come up with the flimsy excuse about an election year. Yeah. And if he was told you can't appoint a Supreme Court justice during an investigation on him, that I think that would carry more weight than using the excuse of an election year.
Yeah, I'm with you, Dan. I just, I don't think it's going to happen as long as Republicans are controlling the Senate. But your point is well taken, Dan. Thanks for the call. Ari in Seattle. Hey, Ari, what's up?
Hi, I'm just calling about homelessness. Mm-hmm. And my experience with it. And I'm a 63-year-old woman who since 2010 has been on and off homeless. And I just want to speak about, it's very emotional for me because people have this stereotype, of what someone who is homeless is. Mm-hmm. And I'm educated. I was a business owner. I had a great life. And then I was married. My husband got sick. All of our money went to him, for medical bills, and then he died. And then I had to go back to work, and I went back to work, and I had an accident at work, and everything spiraled down from there. And I want to let people know that one of the biggest things, I think, is that there's this whole demographic of women, older women, who may not have families or, whatever, but it's kind of hidden. Mm-hmm. And nobody talks about it. And, of course, I'm speaking from it because it's my personal experience. But it's and it's kind of a lost thing. You don't know where to go. You don't know, where to get help or anything. And so I just wanted to point that out.
Remarkable. Are you living with friends or family?
Actually, right now I am. I'm finally getting back on my feet and going back to school because of somebody that's been helpful to me. It's actually an adopted brother. And so, but it's been it's an uphill battle.
Yeah. Ari, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah. You have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
That's wow, that really touches you. We'll be right back. Stick around. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. John in Tualatin, Oregon. Hey, John, what's on your mind? You wanted to get back to reparations?
Yeah, so on reparations, I think there are ways that you could do it where you're not just giving people a check. One of the things, of course, is the big loss of wealth that you spoke of is to, make sure people have a chance to catch up in the terms of real estate. So the government could provide them with special assistance on down payments and discounted loans, or even at market cost, like 1% loan, something where just to cover the governmental cost. Education, like your guy spoke of, like funding historically. Your guest had spoken of your historically black colleges and other colleges, and just making college free, preschool programs, other things like that. Doing things to help close that gap of wealth. And
well, in a way, this is what Lyndon Johnson started. More heavily subsidizing education, housing, medical care, basically all the core stuff that if you're living at the bottom end of the economic scale, it makes it very easy for you to slip through that, net and fall into deep, deep poverty rather than mere poverty, as it were. And
and you can.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and you can never escape. Yeah, you can never escape it. So you're always behind. And if you're able to invest, and the other thing I was going to say is give these people special access to like buying into Medicare for all, but having a special access as a government option, so that because healthcare costs, as some other caller spoke of, devastate people that are on the low end of the economic scale, and allowing them. Maybe it's a transition. Of course, we'd love it for everybody, but that's another area. And so I want to, and I could go on and on about that. And I spoke with you last week at your book signing in Portland, and I finished the book. It's a great book.
Thank you.
And I wanted to address this issue also that was spoken of. Tom, let me ask you a question. Is slavery cruel?
Obviously.
Is the concept of, and is it unusual?
Where are you going with this, John?
Well, what I'm saying is the Constitution says that we cannot have cruel and unusual punishment. But then, as you spoke of, we allow in the 13th Amendment this provision to allow slavery essentially for people that are imprisoned.
Yeah,
so
correct. It does.
Of our own Constitution.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. It does seem like a contradiction. I'm with you, John. Thank you for the call. Tom in Desert Hot Springs, California. Hey, Tom, what's on your mind today?
Today, I'll tell you what.
Hey, Tom, I'm sorry, Tom. I can't talk to you on a phone that sounds like that. Nick, he's on line 3 if you want to try and clean that up. A couple of other things that I just wanted to point out to you. Donald Trump takes credit for passing a veterans bill. This is, when Trump rolled out his campaign, one of the things he said was, oh, yeah, we passed this incredible. Well, here it is. And I quote, he says, "We passed VA choice." Now, VA choice was designed for veterans who live so far out in the middle of nowhere that they can't get to a VA hospital, and so that they can use local medical services. I mean, that's what it was passed for. And it was passed during the Obama administration. So Trump says, we passed VA choice. Now you go out, you get a doctor, you fix yourself up, the doctor sends us a bill, we pay for it. And you know what? It doesn't matter because the life of the veteran is more important, but we also happen to save a lot of money doing that. They've been trying to get that passed for 44 years, Donald Trump said. Yeah, and they passed it during the Obama administration. It's crazy. Tom, you want to try it again from Desert Hot Springs? Tom?
I'm here.
Yeah. What'd you want to say?
Okay. I just wonder why our Democratic people in the House and the Senate can't get together and punish this president for all his crimes that he is committing.
I think that they are slowly, gradually, carefully walking backwards, heading in that direction, Tom. I mean, I don't
feel that.
Yeah, a lot of us don't feel it. That's the thing. I mean, they really need to, and Tom, thank you for the call. I mean, this is the thing that the Republicans were so good at. They had nothing on Hillary Clinton. I mean, the so-called missing emails are not missing. She turned over all her emails on a thumb drive to the FBI. They nuked her server, but and those emails were, by the way, private emails. She took out the private ones. They had nothing. The same thing with Benghazi. There was nothing. I mean, it was the Republicans who actually blocked the requested additional funding for security at Benghazi during the Bush administration, and Clinton and Obama got the blame for that. So they had nothing, and yet they turned that into 2 years of show trials that seriously politically damaged both Hillary Clinton and the Democrats. So this is bizarre. Anyhow, thanks so much for being with us today. Tomorrow morning we'll be doing our show, or tomorrow I'll be doing my show from our studios in Los Angeles, from KPFK's studios in Los Angeles. It's going to be a hoot. And then tomorrow night I'll be on Bill Maher's show, Real Time with Bill Maher. So check it out. Let us know your thoughts. And thanks so much for being with us today. And don't forget, democracy is not a spectator sport. It requires all of us, and that includes you. Get out there, get active, tag. You're it. There's lots you can do. Share the good word about Progressive Media. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.